From the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Okay. Today is Saturday, March 9th, 2013. My name is Will Griffin, and I am a research associate with the Southern Oral History Program at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I am with videographer John Bishop in Albany, Georgia, on the campus of Albany State University to conduct an interview for the Civil Rights History Project, which is a joint undertaking of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture and the Library of Congress. We are here today with Miss Mary Jones. Thank you so much for being here, Mrs. Jones, and agreeing to share your story with the Civil Rights History Project. So I just want to begin by asking you simply, where were you born and when were you born?
Albany, Georgia, Dougherty County, 1933.
1933.
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, July the 24th,
Okay.
1933.
Okay. So, what was it like to grow up in Albany?
Boy, it was kind of rough, but I enjoyed it, but it was kind of rough in those days.
Okay.
I lived it on a farm, see, and a lot of work to do.
Okay.
A lot of excitement too, I would say. My grandmother, who reared me,
What was her name?
Bertha McIntosh.
Bertha McIntosh. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Now, my mother's name, you have that already, I
Yes.
think.
I do. So
But anyway, that was their place that I grew up on, my grandmother's place.
Okay.
Because her four parents had bought that little slot of land. We call it slot long and then.
Slot loan.
Yeah, slot.
Okay.
And so I grew up on that little slot.
Okay.
And we knew a lot about going to church and where you worked during the week and then you went to church on Sundays. And from there on to when I got large enough to really go out and work on the farm,
Right.
the white man's farm, like gathering peanuts and picking cotton and digging potatoes,
Right.
as we call it, pull corn. Also pecans, gathering pecans. We couldn't go to school when school started, like in September. We had to stay and gather the farm. And then after you gather the farm, then you could go to school, and that was around about October, last 1st of November.
Wow. So you missed the first 2 months of school.
Yeah.
this year. And so when you started doing this type of work, how old were you? Or how young were you when you first
I
started?
probably was about 8.
8 years old?
And my grandmother would let me go with this old lady, Miss Alice Porter.
Okay.
And she would take quite a few of the children from the neighborhood to do that kind of work and everything. See, they trusted her because she had children and she didn't play.
She was a taskmaster?
Yes.
Okay.
But I loved her because she was always so sweet. She kept us in line. So after 8 years old, then that was our job, like going out. And sometime before the farm got ready, we would do hoeing bird feed.
Hoeing?
Yeah, hoeing.
What? Explain that. What is that?
That's like what Mr. Keener, who used to be the mayor here, he had a little farm behind ours, and he would plant bird seeds.
Okay.
And they would come up, and we had to hoe the grass from around them. And It was real exciting because he paid us pretty good.
Okay.
Like maybe 75 cents
Okay.
a day.
So that was good.
Sure. That was a lot of money then. And we would save that money like that to help buy our school clothes and things.
Okay. So what your typical day, a typical work day for an 8-year-old child is like how long?
I say about, well, we try to get out there before the sun
Right.
come up because it'd be so hot. So I would say around about 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And they would have food for us to eat.
Okay.
So we didn't have to worry about taking lunches. And we would work till about 5
Wow.
in the afternoon.
So that's it.
And it was in walking distance, so
Okay.
we group of us, we would get together, and all of us lived right around in the same neighborhood. So we would, get together and walk back to the house. That wasn't too far.
Okay.
So we didn't need a chaperone like we did Miss Alice Porter when we went out to do peanuts and cotton and all of that, because we all lived right around the neighborhood.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about when you finally did, once the season was over and it was time to pick the crops and you finally got into school. What were the schools like? What types of schools?
The school was where we first started in the church, First Bethesda Baptist Church. That's one of the oldest churches in the southwest Georgia. Matter of fact, Du Bois attended that church. Visited, rather.
W.B. Du Bois? Wow, okay.
And he was so excited about how it was a great big old something like a barn that the white folks had given us that we could use. They used it first and they built them a church and then gave that to us.
Okay.
So
So did they have special classrooms or did you just hold church like in this?
it was the whole building.
Okay.
In different areas, like first through fifth was in this corner, and then the other over there up until the 7th grade.
Wow. And
Then we ended up building a church our own, and matter of fact, that's where I went to school until I finished 7th grade.
okay, what was the
But
name
we started in the church.
Okay, what was the name of this one that you finished?
Shepherd.
Shepherd.
We
okay.
named it after the master that gave us the big church.
Oh wow.
Because he gave us that ground and stuff, so we named it Shepherd.
Okay.
Elementary school.
Okay. So what were the teachers like in the school? Do you have fond memories of them?
Yeah, that's like your mama.
Just like it. He kept you in line.
They kept us in line. And whip you when you did wrong.
So you knew not to step out of line.
I
Right?
tell you.
Okay. So do you remember any of them names in particular?
Yes. Miss Willie Mae Jackson was my first grade teacher through 3rd.
Okay. So what type of student were you? Did you like going to school for the social part, or were
Yeah.
you there for the academics?
Well, you was gonna have to get that because it's gonna make you get your lesson.
Right.
And from 4th through 7th was Miss Celestine Scott.
Celestine Scott.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So after 7th grade, you went on to high school?
Came to Albany. You had to come to Albany then.
Okay. And how was that? I mean, it was a big change, I imagine.
Yeah, that was a big change because we had to find, some of your relatives or something to stay with.
Okay.
Unless you could get your ride back home every day with people who was working up here in Albany. But I stayed with my aunt. My 3 cousins and myself lived with my aunt, Ella Holloway.
Ella Holloway?
On Cherry Street.
Okay. Now, was that in the primary black community? Was that in Harlem?
Yeah, that was in the black community.
Okay.
And from the, when I came up here, we went to Monroe High School, which is still open today.
Okay. What do you recall about Monroe? What was?
Oh, I loved it, Monroe. I was into sports.
Okay.
I played basketball, ran track.
Oh, wow. So you're all around athlete.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most of my children are.
Okay. Okay. What about your? So you were in high school what year did you graduate from high school?
It's supposed to be 51,
51.
but I was in love and I got married.
That's a good reason.
And he was going to the army the next day or so too.
And so you got married. And what was your husband's name?
Jimmy Lee Jones.
Jimmy Lee Jones. Okay. And how did you meet him? How did he start it?
We started at Monroe. He was at Monroe.
Okay.
He's playing football and basketball, and we met like that.
Okay. So in 1950, I mean, the schools were, they were segregated.
Yes.
And what were the racial conditions like in the 50s in school? Was that something that was on your mind? Were you thinking about race? How did you navigate that?
Well, I had listened to the radio and different things like that and read the paper about in the other cities and thing about this integration. And I read about it and kept up with it, and I said, well, if it hit Albany, Georgia, I will sure enough be a part of it because I want it better for my children.
Okay.
Because see, when my children was old enough to go to public schools, they was just integrating here in Albany then.
Okay.
And they went through so much. They really did.
Okay. And you said you were reading about the movement and hearing about it. What were your sources?
Pittsburgh Courier and the Southwest Georgia.
Okay.
Mr. A.C. Suggs.
Mr. A.C. Suggs?
Yeah, was the owner of that paper and did the writing.
Okay.
What did your children have to go through? That's something that's part of the story that doesn't get told much.
They first integrated the high schools here first. And my oldest daughter was, I signed for her to go the second year.
Okay.
And boy, it was something. The principal, Mr. McNair, he called them little monkeys because he said that's all he ever called them, and he couldn't call them nothing else. And they would have almost a ride every day. And today, I do not understand. Okay, it wasn't too many telephones then in the home, and we didn't have a cell phone. But every time it starts at Albany High, those children from Monroe would be there. I don't know how they got there. But the children got where they didn't want to sit beside them, and in the cafeteria and all of that, and they would spit at them and call them all kind of names, monkeys and bears and all of that.
How did your children respond to this?
She hung in there.
Okay.
She hung in there. I think it was about one or two that acted kind of nice, whites.
Right.
But she hung in there because so many of her friends went along when she did.
Right.
We got them registered and everything. So she had some friends over there, although she had to go through something.
Okay.
And the teachers, I think, she told me she had one or two nice teachers.
Were all of her teachers white at this time? Did the black teachers lose their jobs when the schools integrated?
Not really now. I'm trying to think. Did she have a black teacher over at Albany High? Because that's been a long time. Because, see, she's about 60.
Wow.
But when they started that, like you say, they was transferring black teachers and over to their schools and white teachers over to our schools.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it really didn't help out too much, because if it was any over there, it wasn't over 1 or 2 blacks. And see, everything, you know, it's like my daughter played basketball when she was going to, can't think of the junior high, Carver Junior High. But when she went over there, you know, no need of replying, because they wasn't having any blacks or monkeys.
They actually use those.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
So, when you said your husband went to the military.
Yeah.
And so how long was he away? And
He went along in the time of the movement starting and everything. He went back and active duty.
okay.
He was in the. He was about 2 years.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So what were you?
But the first time he went, he did 2 years.
Okay.
And came out, and then he joined the reserve,
Okay.
Army Reserve.
Right.
So that's when he was called back and active duty.
Okay. So what were you doing while he was away? I mean, obviously you were raising the family, but how did you?
Looking at stories on the TV, because he kept telling me I needed to go on back and finish, because I was liking, that was the last year that we was graduating from the 11th grade here.
Okay.
In 51. And let's see, I played basketball that Friday night, and then we got married that Tuesday. So I went back until later years.
Okay. And
But I was, you know, well, in other words, I was a house mama, housewife, you know. I had to do all the running, like backwards and forward to school, and backwards and forward to all the different meetings and things like that.
Okay. All right. So, what type of lessons were you trying to instill in your kids as they went to school?
First thing, let them know that they were somebody, regardless to the color of the skin, and that God loves all of us. And you're not going to school out there to beat up on nobody, take nobody pencils, take nobody lunch money. You're out there to try to learn, to be somebody in life.
Now, so when the Albany movement sort of blows up and begins to really take effect, your kids are they in school at all? What?
My daughter was 11.
11. Okay.
And my son was 9. And I really had 4 children when he went back in service.
Okay.
I had my last 2 after he came out.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, they liked the sports just like we did. But my son, he liked the sports. He played football and ran track and high jumped. I forgot about that. I high jumped too.
Okay. All right. So the movement, you finally you said when it comes to Albany, it's here now.
Yeah.
How do you respond to it?
I had heard about the Montgomery incident, you know,
Right.
about the bus car and all that. So when it first started, the Criteria Club here had organized and got together, and I had worked with them in voter registration, helping get people to register to vote. Matter of fact, they had a little school, like it wasn't a school, but it was set up in the office. that we taught people how to read, because the main incident that they asked for when you go down to register, and most of the people back then didn't have an education.
Okay.
You had to learn how to read the
Was it the Georgia
Just a minute.
Constitution?
yeah, that's it.
Okay.
The Constitution.
So when you set out to do these voter registration drives, how did you go about doing this? Did you go door to door, knocking on doors?
Yeah, we had to canvass.
Okay, canvassing.
Yeah, and especially in the projects where I was living, and it was so many, people out there who was not registered to vote, who was scared to go down because they had heard tell all of that, what they had to read, and most of them couldn't hardly read.
Right.
But after I started working with them in some more, and had these little classes and things, they got then where I guess they were saying that if Miss Jones down there, I know it's going to be all right. She going to help me, because that's what I did.
Okay.
And even after getting them, registered to vote, you had to carry them back. I remember one lady told me, and I got so upset about it. It told her, carried her the flyer about the registering and the vote and all that. And she said she was going to do it, so I talked to her the day after. She said, no, I didn't. I registered like you told me. I said, but baby, you didn't vote. And that's what counts. I didn't know. I said, no, now we talked about that.
Right.
Going through all of that and everything, and then you don't register. How will we ever get some black peoples in?
Right.
Because we won't hold in nothing then
Okay.
in Albany.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So could you?
So working with that long, with the movement when it started, and carrying folks back and forth down to get registered.
Okay.
And then making sure that they go back to vote.
Okay.
I worked with that a while, and then I worked on the police committee.
Committee, right?
With the movement.
Okay. And you were the first black on this committee, right? How did this whole process come about that you become the first?
I'm the only one living now. It was 7 of us.
Oh, there were 7 of us. Okay.
And they chose us from the movement, who would want to be on this committee to go down to talk to Chief Pritchett.
Okay.
And so, the different ones volunteered to go, along with myself. Miss McCree Harris was our spokesman. She was working at Monroe High.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So, a lot of people, Chief Floyd Pritchett is pretty popular, as you know.
Yes, he was.
So what was your opinion of Sheriff Pritchett?
The first 2 or 3 times we went, he ignored us.
Ignored you.
And about the 4th time, and he knew Miss McCree Harris because she was working at Monroe and was kind of among the different things that go on here in the city went on.
Okay.
So he finally wanted to know, well, McCree, what y'all want? She said, well, we've been here 3 times and we tried to tell you. I said, but you just told your man over there, she said, just like that, the man over there, to ask us to have a seat. Saying we sat for an hour or 2, almost 2 hours, and you never did come. So we got up and left, saying we came back again, saying the same thing happened. Say you were so busy. Saying then the 3rd time we came, and so he said, oh, I'm just so sorry, I have so much to do. And so he apologized, and then he told her, he said, well, y'all just put the word out and everything. He said, because nobody has been up here to apply for a job. So the next time we met, that's the first thing she wanted to know, had anybody been up there? He said no. So she said, well, I tell you what, you give me some applications. She said, I go out and I canvass. Would that be all right? Oh, yeah, that'll be all right. Uh-huh. So she did.
Mm-hmm.
And from that process, they did hire 5. I think it was 5. 5. I think it was 5. Uh-huh. Oh, that was Idris Smith.
Idris Smith.
Uh-huh. David High.
Okay.
Robert Benning.
Robert Benning.
Yeah. Insert in there, Big Junior, because that's what we call it. Most folks didn't know his name because he was working at the funeral home before then. And the other 2 names. How many that I
You
gave?
said Idris Smith, David High, and Robert Benning, Big Junior.
And it's two more.
Okay. That's
Is
fine.
there any way I can?
That's
if
fine.
If it come to me.
Yeah, you can get them to
Okay.
me. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so
So, but they were told when they was hired, you know, you can't rest on white folks.
and
It's
this
true.
was in. So they weren't really full officers,
No,
right?
they was full time for us.
Right. But they just couldn't.
Oh no.
Now, did they have police cars? They didn't get patrol
no, they
cars?
had to walk that beat.
Uniforms? Did they have regular uniforms?
Yeah, they had
They did
regular
regular
uniforms.
Okay. Because I know in some cities, you know, they would give them these positions.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't give them uniforms. They
They
wouldn't
did-
give them patrol cars.
No, they-
And they couldn't carry weapons in some instances.
Well, they was already coached on. I'm trying to think. I think they had weapons, but I know they were told that they couldn't rest on whites. And the reason that came about, the movement decided to start, you know, going up talking to them about this, because every week or two, some black man got killed. All you had to do was stumble across that floor there, and they were killed.
And it was usually at the hands of a police officer.
Yeah.
Right.
And we went up and, you know, swear to them, you know, we don't feel safe because it's just only white policemen and they're the one doing the killing.
Right. And the police force is supposed to make you feel safe.
Yeah, every week. I'm telling you the truth. Somebody got shot. This and that. So out of that, they did hire them, like I said, and everything, but they gave them their rules and regulations.
Do you remember the year that the first black police officers were hired? Was it in the 60s or 50s?
It was in the 60s.
It was in the 60s.
Because it was during the movement, and the
Okay.
movement then started by about last of 61.
61, okay.
Yeah, it was in the 60s.
Okay. I wanted to backtrack a little bit because
Okay.
the Criterion Club has come up in some newspaper articles, but no one knows that much about it. Could you talk about some of the leadership of the Criterion Club and I guess some of the reasons why they formed initially? You said that they formed initially to was it voter registration? Was that their
They were
primary
doing,
goal?
they were doing voter registration, but they kind of the one that came in also with a few more and set up the Albany movement.
Okay. Who were some of the more prominent leaders in the Criterion Club?
Okay, Dr. William Anderson.
Okay. Okay.
Shavine, Attorney King, Shavine King,
Okay.
Thomas Chapman,
Okay.
good as I know them folks, I'll tell you.
Page was there?
Yeah,
Page.
yeah, Page,
Okay.
I can't even think of his first name now.
Okay.
It was quite a few of them.
Okay.
So they helped organize
the Albany movement.
But they were already, into registration and all of that.
Okay.
So they chose Dr. William Anderson as the president of the Albany movement.
Okay.
And then they had Mr. Page, like you call his name, he was the secretary.
Okay.
And a few more others go on and on. I can't think of all the folks now.
That's okay. So when the Albany movement, when the students, the Freedom Riders come in, what are you thinking? How does that, does it, I know it captivates.
That's what really tipped it off, because, see, they came in and they went out through the country area and all of that. They came in one Sunday evening on the, that they met them because my husband hadn't gone back into duty then. Active duty then, so they all went down to the train station and welcomed them in.
And that's when they were arrested and
yeah,
beaten.
And they had the mass meetings every night, but Saturday and Sunday. But if it was necessary for a call meeting, they would.
And they moved these mass meetings around, or were they always at one particular place?
Now, some of the ministers didn't cooperate with it because they were afraid that some of the churches had gotten burned up in Lee County and Terre County,
right? Yeah.
Which was a blessing, because they was little shacks anyway. And when Dr. King and them organization and thing built those churches back, it was so nice.
Okay. So now I didn't hear about it. I have heard about the rash of church burnings in Leesburg. So Dr. King played a role in getting these.
Yeah, helped getting funds.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about that? How did that take place? Or I'm not
Talking about the burning.
Yeah, the burnings and then
because they had mass meeting at those churches.
Okay.
And they were on people's places, plantations thing.
And some people were even afraid of Martin Luther King coming to these churches.
Yeah,
right.
they were.
But he ended up helping them anyway, rebuild some of these churches?
Yeah, because he knew all these different organizations and all of that.
Oh, it was fun,
Very intelligent person.
So did you ever get a chance to meet him personally?
King,
Dr. King, did you ever get a chance to meet him personally?
Yeah, going by like shaking his hand at the movement or something. There'd be so many folks around and you couldn't get there to try to talk personally.
Right. So now when they started, when did you decide to become, involved in the marches and so forth? And you finally, when was the first time you got arrested?
What happened, it drew out of one of the meetings that we were having, mass meetings and things, and about the marching and all of that. Well, the children had marched first, the young people. And so the Albany Herald had printed, and also on the Channel 10, which was James Gray's
newspaper.
And he was saying about the grown-ups, they too scared to march, so they pushed the children out to do their work.
Right.
And boy, we had a fit about that. Cause my oldest daughter was locked up too, 11 years old.
So that was a call, a challenge, a
yeah.
clarion call.
And pushed the children out first. So then we said, no, that ain't gonna go. So we organized right there to the mass meeting. And who wanted to march, and all the hands just went up.
Okay.
And so we met around there on the corner of Washington and Broad Avenue the next morning. And we marched down Washington Street by the old jail, which was on, I can't think of that street now, but I know it wasn't Flint. Because I knew the name. But anyway, it'll come back. But anyway, about 700 of us.
Wow.
Grown-ups.
Okay, so you were in the large
Yeah.
one.
So the thing that we had to straighten out because they said we sent for Martin Luther King to come do our job.
Right.
We didn't send for him to come march because 700 of us was in jail when he came.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So this is strictly a local movement until
Yeah.
King.
Uh-huh. So I was in there from Monday about 11 o'clock to Thursday. Uh-huh. My father came and bonded me out.
Okay.
But anyway,
So what, I mean, before you go into that,
okay,
what
that's what I want you to do. Ask me what you want me to say.
The marching, I mean, walking with 700 people, how does that make a person feel? I mean,
There wasn't no one. We was in every jail around here.
Right.
I went to Baker County Jail.
okay. When you were arrested, how did they treat you? Were they hostile? Were they strong-handed?
Yeah, they had the billy club. Get on in here. You're marching. They had warned us one time, if you don't stop that singing and go home, you're going to be locked up. And we got louder then. Ain't going to let nobody turn me around. And so we marched around about 2 more times and showing up. They told us we was under arrest. And back then the jail was so small and had a little place in the back. But it wasn't big. It was about big as from where he's sitting over here.
Okay.
And that's where they put 700 of us.
Wow.
We was all on top of each other almost. And they let you stood out there about 3 or 4 hours and it was pouring down rain then.
What?
Then they finally let us come in and they booked us.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent us different places. I was into to remember the name of the jail around here that wouldn't take any of them. Said they didn't want to have anything to do with that. I can't think of what. I'm telling you.
So there was one county that wouldn't
that
take
said no, we aren't taking any.
Okay.
I can't think of it to save my life.
That's okay.
But
So I mean, how did they? I mean, what did you do in the 700 in jail? How did you go to the restroom to eat? Did they feed you?
The little room down there, the Baker County where I was, it actually would look like about 8 or 10, and they put 25 in there. One bed.
Wow.
The mattress was split in the middle and on the floor. The sink was running, the water had wet the mattress. And that's where we had to stay, sit on the floor and all of that.
From Monday through Thursday.
And pray and cry. And every night they would come out with some German Shepherd dogs, and they would put them all look like almost to the window, but they had the fence around. They couldn't get exactly to the window. And they would make them dogs so mad they'd be barking and going on. And they said, we ought to go in there. We ought to open the gate and let these dogs go in there and eat them up and see what they'll do then. That's what we need to do. And boy, we would sing louder and pray and everything. Then when they feed you food, I told some of them, I said, when I go home, I said, the peas that I'm going to cook, I'm going to be able to drink them. Them peas were so hard you couldn't hardly cut them.
Wow.
Couldn't eat them. Grits the same way. And they take the butter and put right in the middle of the grits and throw the bread on top of it. And that's what they gave us to eat like that. Grits and bread and peas, black-eyed peas, like that. And we were so tired down there, we was just, I tell you the truth, it was rough and tough. But if I had to do it again, I would have done that. Because they were studying marching as we, got out. And I tried to go back, but they wouldn't arrest me.
They wouldn't arrest you again?
See, we knew how to dress. Then they had told us how to put on extra clothes, up under your pants or what like that. It was too many of them going to jail and had nowhere to put us.
So you just continued to march.
So it was really rough and tough, but it was worth every bit of it. And of course, we had some good white friends too.
Right.
That really helped out. You know, a lot of them couldn't come out to the front, you
And
know,
march,
and do,
right.
but they helped.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember any in particular?
No, because they didn't really, they called the name, but they was kind of quiet with
Okay.
it, because they didn't mean for nothing to get back, you
Right.
know.
Okay.
Because they would end up doing it in the same way. Any of them that paid us any attention.
Right.
Because see how they did the civil rights leaders that came in, and the Sherrod and them.
Right.
It didn't make no difference with them. If you sided with us blacks, like, no, they won't call us black. Then if you associated with niggers, you got just what the niggers got. So they were going to jail. So, and see, all this came about because our leaders, like the Criterion Club and some ministers and others, had gone down and tried talking with the city manager. Then I can't think of his name. Talk with Pritchard and them, you know, about the situation here.
Right.
And they wouldn't even talk to him. No, you ain't got nothing to talk about.
They just wanted you to stop
That's
protesting.
right.
And
Oh,
just
yeah.
stay in your place.
But after it got so many, and they see that it won't gonna be no stopping, then they did. But before they did that, we had to cut off all ties with the downtown Albany. We started going to Moultrie, getting our clothes and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
They gave us time to get our, it must have coming up to Christmas, because they gave us time to get our layaways out. And once you got them out, Albany was a black Christmas. Folks was going to Camilla and Cordial, place like that, and we mostly was going, and I was taking people to Moultrie.
So the boycott was
Yeah,
was a
the
success.
boycott was, they start sending for you then. Want to talk. Sure did.
During Christmas.
It was coming up to Christmas when I went to jail, because we had gotten our things out, I believe it was the first Monday in December.
Okay.
Get all your layaways out, because that's the way we shop then, by layaway.
Right.
You know, putting that stuff up and paint on it.
Yeah, I've heard about the layaway system. Yeah, I know
Yes,
about
good.
it. Okay. So now, when your father comes to get you out of jail, what's the first thing you do? What do you do? How do you feel?
I felt so good, I'm telling you, because I wanted to see my children. Because see, my neighbor next door, she was overseeing them.
Okay.
Because she had dared me to go to jail. She know I was going, because I'd always said it. I said, once it hit Albany, I'm sorry. You better not to go to jail.
This is your time, though, right?
Yeah. And so I was real happy and everything. Now, some of the people, I think, lost money in that deal, because that was the first beginning of it, where they'd tell you you could put your house, you know, up, or either pay. I forget how much the fine was.
Right.
But a lot of that, they kept that money and stuff.
So they made a lot of money out of it.
Yeah.
And your father just.
But he didn't lose nothing.
He didn't lose anything. Okay. Okay.
So
after this, you go back out and you march some more, and is that the extent of your participation? How do you continue to stay involved?
yeah, I
beyond
stayed
marching?
involved, and I couldn't go to jail no more.
Okay.
They wouldn't arrest me. So I took on then. Just a minute here.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Then I was living in the Washington Projects.
Okay.
Which is right down over there. You can't tell it now, because I think they got a golf course down there now.
Okay.
But it was so many of us living out there in the project. Then we kind of, even the movement was going on each night. They would meet at my house at 12 o'clock every day,
Oh,
Sherrod and them.
Okay.
And that would give all the older people who wasn't able to really walk down the Shiloh or Mount Zion from the projects over there on Washington Street.
Okay.
That would give them a chance to come to the meetings too.
Okay.
And we would have that there. Plus, I worked as one of the voting captains.
Okay.
That was, I was the one out there in Washington Street project that they would tell at the mass meeting who we're going to vote for, because we had our people then.
Right.
The ones that were going to do right and everything. So then I would call them and let them know, or either go around to the house the next day and let them know who to vote for when they go to vote.
Okay. Okay. So I guess just looking back, reflecting back on Albany's movement, the successes and failures, where would you pin those? If there were any failures and were successes?
I wouldn't say failure because Lord knows where we were before it started,
Right.
before it began. I would say it was a success because that come up to the schools and all of that, and our peoples look like a lot of them really caught on and began to try to do for their children and bring them up the right way and everything, and then good jobs open up
Right.
and everything, because we didn't have no good jobs. If you did, you was just like Belts department store. We had to picket that place for the longest before they were hiring the blacks, besides cleaning up.
Right.
But they finally come around because they know they were closed for that Christmas because we didn't shop there. So when I go to those stores now, all these stores, that you wasn't working in them, not ringing no cash register or nothing. Only clean up and go pick up the mail and things like that, and to watch black people when they come in.
Right. Okay. So if there are any legacies that you would want, known about Albany's movement, I mean, what would be the most important thing that you would want people to know?
One thing, much prayer, and then sticking together, and not going back to them old Uncle Tom ways. Everything that, they try to do, I sneak off at night and go tell him, my boss man, or whatever.
Right.
We had a lot of snitches. But they didn't fuss at them, and then they let them know they knew who they were.
Okay.
But they didn't have to call their name, but they could tell it so plain because they know who they were. And I would say, by sticking together, first thing was, like I told you, much prayer. And then sticking together. And we learned how to love more then, because back then we was kind of off in love each other. We had gotten where like we hated each other, like the white man hated them.
You think we've gotten to that point now?
We're getting to it. We ain't to it all together, but we're working on it.
Okay.
So we're trying to let that be a legacy about doing, the right thing.
Okay.
Not only about, black people, but white peoples too. Because it's like I told you, we had some good white folks in there.
Right.
And another committee I thought about, I wanted to talk about. We had all kind of committees from the movement. And one thing I wanted to make sure about the teachers.
Yeah.
Because the superintendent had told them if they marched, that was their job.
Right.
They could not march. So now, what is more important? March and going to jail and you don't have no job, or either helping the people who went to jail. And that's what they did.
So they helped.
They organized, and people's marched, They saw about their children.
Oh, okay.
They bought food, paid light bills, paid the rent.
Wow.
I'm telling you what I know.
Wow.
So
So
they
that-
played an important role in the Albany movement.
And
You
those-
don't hear about it
Yeah,
too
those are
much.
stories you definitely don't.
You don't hear about it, but I know about it because I was there.
Okay.
They played an important role because they didn't have to worry about nothing. And one thing, we had one lady, she was older than me, but she sold Avon. So she heard about that, and they was telling her what happened. She said, well, I can go to jail because these folks ain't buying no Avon and stuff, no, they ain't got no money. So I can go to jail. So she did.
Right.
She went 3 or 4 times, and her lights was paid, her rent, and when she got out, she had food and things.
wow.
They did that. And therefore, people like myself and others who didn't have the money, you know, you wanted to do something, but you really didn't have nothing. So I wanted to say that because they really played an important role in this movement.
It was well put. I like
Anything else you all want to ask? I don't want to take up all your time.
No, ma'am, Mrs. Jones. I really appreciate it. I want to thank you again for sitting down and taking the time and sharing these wonderful stories that you have, and we
Okay.
appreciate it.
Yeah, and I told you about my educational background. Because I didn't do that until after, you know, the movement. Well, during the movement, that's when that came out.
Okay.
The war on poverty.
Right.
President Johnson was the president, and Sergeant Shriver was over that program, the Head Start program. Now that get me stirred up when they start talking about cutting them funds for Head Start,
Right.
because I know where my education came from.
And you went into early childhood education.
Yes, sure did. And 15 hours on a master, but I promised the good Lord I'd go in home with that I got. It was just too hard. I had to got too old.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.